the Horror Podcast.
All right, so get ready to explore something a little bit different with me today. We're
Yeah.
diving deep into the world of H.P. Lovecraft, but not in the way you might be thinking.
Oh, okay, I'm intrigued. What's on the docket for today?
We're leaving those tentacled monsters in cosmic dread behind, well, for now at least.
Okay.
Today we're going underground,
Mm-hmm.
literally,
Yeah.
into Lovecraft's early fiction. Think crumbling mansions and hidden tombs, that classic Gothic setting.
Yeah, it's not the Lovecraft most people immediately think of.
Right.
But these early stories, they're so crucial for understanding how he developed as a writer. We tend to focus so much on what some call the Lovecraft era, with the cosmic horror.
Right.
But this Gothic era, it gives us this completely different lens to view those themes through, the isolation, the decay, and of course, humanity's place in the universe.
Yeah, and I love a good origin story, so let's unpack this idea of a Gothic era a bit.
Yeah.
What exactly makes an early Lovecraft story distinctly Gothic?
Okay, well, picture this. You have this crumbling mansion shrouded in this perpetual mist, and there's this family, right? And their history, it's steeped in this palpable darkness. That's classic Gothic.
Yeah.
And Lovecraft uses these settings to evoke this really specific sense of unease and dread in the reader.
Right, sets the stage.
Exactly. And some perfect examples of this are stories like The Shun House and The Rats in the Walls, both just dripping with this unsettling atmosphere. And throughout these stories, you get this overwhelming feeling that something sinister, something truly evil is lurking just beneath the surface, hidden in the shadows.
Okay, so creepy old houses, family secrets, definitely checking off those classic Gothic tropes. But you said we were going underground, literally. Please tell me we're not about to analyze plumbing.
No, not plumbing.
Okay, good.
Although that could be interesting in its own way. But no, what I meant is that it's fascinating how often Lovecraft puts his characters in these literal subterranean settings. Like, we're talking tombs, crypts, buried ruins, you name it. It's like he's just drawn to these hidden spaces.
So are we talking about stories like The Tomb, where that young man becomes obsessed with a crypt?
Exactly. It's like this literal descent into darkness, both physically and psychologically. And that descent going into those subterranean spaces often mirrors a character's internal state. Like in The Outsider, the protagonist is living underground, literally.
Wow.
And he's yearning for this connection he just can't have. It's really quite tragic.
It sounds like Lovecraft is using these Gothic settings to explore not just physical spaces, but the dark, hidden depths of the human psyche.
Precisely. And, if you consider Lovecraft's own life during this time, it was a rough period for him. His family basically went bankrupt, and he struggled a lot with social anxieties.
Oh, wow.
You start to see how those anxieties seep into his writing. It's like he's grappling with his own sense of isolation, his own otherness through these stories.
So those subterranean settings, they become a metaphor for his character's internal struggles and, in a way, Lovecraft's own. This is where it gets really interesting.
It does, and it's also where we can clearly see the influence of Edgar Allan Poe on his writing. Lovecraft was a huge admirer of Poe's work.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see that influence in how he builds those claustrophobic atmospheres and that sense of inevitable doom. Like, something bad is going to happen, but you just don't know when or how.
Right. It's like he's drawing on the power of the Gothic to explore these universal anxieties we all feel about, like isolation, our identities, our place in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly.
And these themes would eventually lead him to those cosmic horrors he's known for.
It's a fascinating progression to think about, right? Going from crumbling mansions and hidden tombs to this vast, unknowable expanse of the cosmos.
Right.
I mean, it makes you wonder, what happens when you've explored those subterranean depths and then you realize there are even more depths below that?
It's that a question I am ready to unpack. But first, we need to dig a little deeper into how those anxieties actually manifest in his early work. What details in these Gothic tales give us a glimpse into the man behind those monstrous myths?
Well, for starters, there's this recurring motif of the isolated individual desperately seeking connection, but often with disastrous results.
Interesting.
And this theme, it might be connected to his own failed marriage, which, must have been devastating. Take The Nameless City, for example. On the surface, it's about this literally buried civilization. But at its core, it represents this forbidden knowledge, the deep human desire to uncover hidden truths, even if it leads to our destruction.
So we're talking about those very human anxieties about connecting with others, understanding our place in the world, facing the unknown. And that's all without even considering the ancient curses and creepy houses. It's one thing to talk about like themes and metaphors, but Lovecraft really brings those anxieties to life in his writing. Like you can practically feel the weight of that isolation closing in on these characters.
Well, that's the mark of a truly skilled horror writer, wouldn't you say? That ability to tap into those primal fears, the ones we all share, and make them feel real, immediate.
Absolutely, it's so effective. But what I find so fascinating about those early stories is that it's not just about like external monsters or cosmic dread. It's the internal struggles, those very human anxieties about connection and belonging that really stick with you.
It's the exploration of the human psyche, that descent into the subterranean depths of our own minds. That's what makes his work so compelling, so unsettling. And it's often in those depths that we find the most unsettling truths about ourselves.
We talked about the outsider and the nameless city, but are there any other stories from this period that really highlight these themes for you?
Oh, there are so many, but one that immediately comes to mind is Bickman's model. On the surface, it's a classic horror story, about this painter whose art becomes, well, disturbingly lifelike.
Right, I see where you're going with it.
But beneath that surface, there's this whole exploration of artistic obsession, that deep-seated desire to capture both the grotesque and the beautiful, even if it means crossing boundaries that probably shouldn't be crossed.
And didn't Lovecraft himself struggle with feeling like an outsider? Like he never quite fit in with the world around him? It makes you wonder if there's a little bit of Pickman in Lovecraft himself, that yearning for recognition and connection through his art.
Oh, absolutely. It's a really compelling connection, and it just highlights how Lovecraft used his fiction to grapple with these really real, very human anxieties. He might have later embraced the vastness of cosmic horror,
Right.
but in these early stories, we see him confronting the terrors that hit much closer to home, the terrors of the human heart.
And maybe that's why his early work resonates with readers, even today, even those who maybe aren't diehard Lovecraft fans, right? Because those anxieties about isolation, about finding your place in the world, those are timeless, universal fears.
Precisely. And Lovecraft's genius lies in his ability to give those fears a tangible form, to make them feel as real and immediate as, like, the shadows lurking in the corner of a darkened room.
It's like he's shining a light into those dark corners of our own minds, those subterranean spaces we try so hard to keep hidden, even from ourselves. And what we find there isn't always pretty.
It rarely is, but that's the power of horror, isn't it? To confront us with the things we fear the most, the things we try so hard to keep buried deep down inside.
And in Lovecraft's case, those buried things often seem to find their way to the surface, even when he tries to bury them under layers of cosmic dread and tentacled horrors.
It's almost as if those cosmic horrors are a way for him to distance himself from the rawness of those more personal anxieties.
I see what you mean.
By imagining a universe where humanity is completely insignificant in the face of these vast, unknowable forces, perhaps he found a way to cope with the anxieties of his own existence.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? The idea that by embracing the vast indifference of the cosmos, we might actually find a strange kind of solace from the terrors of our own hearts.
It's a chilling thought, to be sure, but one that gets to the heart of Lovecraft's enduring appeal. He understood that true horror doesn't always wear a monster's face. Sometimes it whispers to us from the depths of our own souls.
And sometimes it compels us to build walls of cosmic indifference to keep those whispers at bay. It's like he's saying, yeah, the universe is full of terrifying creatures and ancient evils, sure. But, have you met humans?
Right, which is the scarier thought, like being devoured by Cthulhu or realizing that some of our deepest fears, the things that really keep us up at night, actually come from within.
Okay, so we've journeyed through crumbling mansions, hidden tombs. We even grappled with the cosmic a bit today. But let's bring it back to us, the readers. Why should we care about this, this lesser-known Gothic side of Lovecraft?
Because it reminds us that even the master of cosmic horror, the writer who seemed to revel in humanity's insignificance, he started his journey by exploring those anxieties, those complexities of what it truly means to be human.
It's like those subterranean settings we've been talking about, It wasn't just about creating a creepy atmosphere. It was about Lovecraft using those spaces, those dark and hidden places, to grapple with his own internal world. Those anxieties about connection, identity, finding our place in this vast, often indifferent universe.
Exactly. And, by understanding those early stories, those early explorations, we gain a much deeper appreciation for his work as a whole, for the intricate tapestry he created. It's not just about cosmic dread and these unimaginable horrors. It's about the human heart that beats beneath it all, the heart that both craves and fears connection, the heart that seeks meaning, even in the face of oblivion.
We see those anxieties play out in his characters too, these isolated individuals searching for something more, often finding something much darker than they bargained for.
And that's the thing about Lovecraft's work, what makes it so effective, so haunting. It stays with you. It makes you question those shadowy corners of your own psyche, those places where fear and longing reside. He forces us to confront the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the most terrifying monsters aren't lurking out there in the vast expanse of the cosmos, but within ourselves.
That's a truly unsettling thought. But it's also a testament to the power of his writing, to his ability to get under our skin. He may have built walls of cosmic indifference in his later work, but beneath those walls, you can feel the pulse of something very human, very real. And it's in those raw, vulnerable moments, those glimpses into the human heart, that his work truly transcends the genre and becomes something much more profound.
He might not have always wanted to explore the human heart, but in those early stories he did, and we're all the richer for it.
So the next time you find yourself exploring the world of H.P. Lovecraft, remember, don't just look to the stars. Look inward. You might be surprised by the darkness and the light that you find there. Until next time, keep exploring those shadowy corners of literature and keep asking the big questions.